Chosen one, something shifts on March 3rd, and you were meant to receive this before the clock crosses into that day. There are moments in time that feel ordinary on the surface. Just another date on the calendar, just another sunrise. But every now and then, there's a threshold day, a line in the sand where the energy changes, where decisions start carrying more weight, where the version of you that walks into that date is not the same as the one who walks out of it. March 3rd is one of those days for you. Not because the world will explode, not because something dramatic will fall from the sky, but because internally, something has been building toward that point. Before we go deeper into this, I need you to stay with me until the very end. Don't scroll away halfway through. Don't treat this like background noise. There's something layered here that unfolds step by step, and if you miss a piece, you'll miss the timing of it. And when it resonates, when you feel that quiet confirmation rising in your chest, I want you to write your warmest wishes in the comments and seal them with Amen. Just once, from the heart. This is a chapter about wishes coming true and energizing the universe, about aligning your spirit with what's already preparing to unfold. But after that moment, we move into awareness. Because this isn't just about wishing, it's about readiness. March 3rd is not random. It marks a transition. And transitions don't begin on the day itself. They begin in the days before. That's why you needed to see this now. There has been a subtle restlessness inside you lately, not anxiety exactly, not fear, just a sense that something is approaching. Like you're standing on the edge of a shift, but can't quite see what's on the other side. You might have noticed it in your sleep patterns, in the way your thoughts drift toward the future, in how certain conversations feel like they're closing chapters instead of opening them. That's preparation. Preparation rarely feels glamorous. It feels like introspection. It feels like reevaluating. It feels like questioning things you thought were settled. And right now, you're in that space. You've been reviewing your own patterns. Not obsessively, just honestly. You've noticed where you procrastinate, where you overextend, where you shrink, where you settle. That awareness didn't come out of nowhere. It's leading somewhere. March 3rd represents a decision point, not a forced decision, a conscious one. It's the moment where you either step into the new standard you've been talking about, or you quietly return to the comfort of the old one. That's why this message matters before the date arrives. Because once the moment comes, momentum moves quickly. You don't want to be scrambling for clarity when the door is already open. You want to be steady, grounded, aware. Let's talk about what's actually shifting. Your tolerance is changing. You can't ignore misalignment the way you used to. You can't laugh off disrespect the same way. You can't keep postponing your own growth. There's a pressure building, so not destructive pressure, refining pressure. It's the kind that makes you uncomfortable in old environments, the kind that makes you restless in routines that once felt fine. That's evolution knocking. And March 3rd feels like a checkpoint, a spiritual audit. Not in a judgmental way, in a clarifying way. Where are you really? Are your actions matching your intentions? Are your habits matching your vision? Are your boundaries matching your worth? You've said you want more peace, more stability, more expansion, more alignment. But wanting is not the same as embodying. An embodiment requires discipline. Discipline is not punishment, it's alignment in action. Between now and March 3rd, There's an invitation to tighten your focus, not obsessively, intentionally. Look at your daily rhythm. What drains you unnecessarily? What distractions are stealing hours from you? What conversations are keeping you small? Small leaks sink big ships. And you are not meant to sink in this next season. You are meant to rise, but rising requires shedding. You can't carry everything into March 3rd. Some habits must be left behind. Some attachments must be loosened. Some narratives must be rewritten. You are not who you were at the beginning of this year. You've matured quietly. You've learned lessons you didn't announce. You've strengthened boundaries you didn't broadcast. Now comes the test of consistency. Will you sustain it, or will you slip back into what's comfortable? Comfort is seductive. It whispers, just relax, you've done enough. But growth whispers something else. It says, stay steady. You're closer than you think. There's also a deeper emotional layer here. March 3rd may trigger memories, anniversaries, internal comparisons. You might measure where you are against where you thought you'd be by now. Don't let comparison steal your clarity. Your timeline is precise. Even the delays were precise. You didn't miss anything. You were being shaped. Shaping takes time. And now, the shaping is almost complete for this cycle. This is the final stretch before a pivot. You may feel the urge to retreat, to isolate, to overthink. That's normal. But don't let overthinking paralyze you. Reflection is good. Rumination is not. Use this time to solidify your direction. Write things down. Get clear on what you will and will not tolerate. Get honest about what you need to change. Small adjustments now prevent major regrets later. March 3rd is not a magical day. It's a momentum day. Momentum days amplify what you've been practicing. If you've been disciplined, it accelerates progress. If you've been distracted, it amplifies confusion. That's why awareness before the date matters. There's also a relational shift happening. You're noticing who supports your growth and who subtly resists it. Pay attention. Not everyone who smiles is aligned. Not everyone who questions you is against you. Discernment is key. Discernment protects your energy, and your energy needs to be sharp. You can't afford emotional chaos right now. You can't afford impulsive decisions. You can't afford self-sabotage. The next chapter demands clarity. Clarity requires quiet. Between now and the March 3rd, create moments of quiet, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's in your car. Just breathe. Just listen to your own thoughts without distraction. Your intuition is louder than you think. You've just been drowning it out with noise. Chosen one, this message isn't about fear. It's about alignment. You needed to see this before March 3rd, because the version of you who crosses into that day must be intentional, not reactive, not confused. Intentional. Set your focus. Tighten your standards. Guard your peace. Release what drains. Lean into discipline, not perfectly, consistently. You don't need to make a dramatic move. You need to make a steady one. When March 3rd arrives, you'll feel it. Not fireworks, but confirmation. Confirmation that you didn't drift into it blindly. You stepped into it consciously. And that makes all the difference. This is your checkpoint, your alignment window, your moment to recalibrate before acceleration. Don't waste it. You were meant to see this before the date changed, not after. Because preparation changes outcomes. And you are being prepared, not for chaos, but for momentum. Chosen one, this chapter is about the pressure you've been feeling but haven't fully named. Because as March 3rd gets closer, it's not just about decisions or discipline. It's about identity compression. That feeling like something inside you is being squeezed, not crushed, refined. Have you noticed it? You're more sensitive to inconsistency, more aware of your own contradictions. Things you used to brush off now sit with you. You replay conversations. You rethink choices. Not in panic, in evaluation. That's not anxiety, that's alignment trying to solidify. When a date carries weight, even symbolically, your spirit responds ahead of time. It starts reorganizing, quietly rearranging priorities, surfacing what still feels unresolved. And unresolved things get louder before transition. You might feel slightly irritated lately, or restless, or detached, not because something is wrong, but because something is ending internally. There are versions of you expiring: the people-pleasing version, the procrastinating version, the version that pretended not to care when it did, the version that shrank in rooms it deserved to expand in. You can feel those identities loosening their grip. But here's the truth. When old identities die, there's a moment of emotional withdrawal. You might feel empty for a second, like you're not sure who you are without those habits. That's normal. You are shedding coping mechanisms, not your core. March 3rd feels like a crossing because it represents a stabilization point, not a dramatic breakthrough, a settling, like concrete that's been poured and is about to harden. Whatever you've been practicing internally is about to lock in. If you've been building discipline, it stabilizes. If you've been drifting, that drift becomes harder to correct. That's why this chapter matters. You still have space to adjust. You still have space to tighten things up, not out of fear, out of respect for your future self. Respect looks like small sacrifices: going to bed instead of scrolling, choosing silence instead of gossip, staying focused instead of spiraling. You don't need extreme change. You need integrity between who you say you are and what you actually do. Integrity builds power. Power builds confidence. Confidence stabilizes decisions. And decisions shape timelines. There's also something emotional that needs to be acknowledged. March 3rd might not just be about the future. It might connect to your past. Sometimes dates carry subconscious weight. Memories, old goals, old disappointments. You may find yourself reflecting more than usual. Let it happen. Reflection is not weakness, it's integration. But don't get stuck there. The past is information, not identity. You are not your previous outcomes. You are your current choices. That distinction matters now more than ever. You've grown. Even if the external results don't fully reflect it yet, you've matured emotionally. You've learned when to walk away. You've learned when to speak up. You've learned when to hold your energy instead of giving it away freely. That growth is subtle, but it's real. And March 3rd feels like a checkpoint where that growth becomes visible to you. Not necessarily to everyone else, to you. You might wake up that day and feel calm, clear, less torn, less conflicted. That's alignment settling in. The work you've done internally is starting to integrate. But integration requires one last layer of honesty. Where are you still pretending? Where are you still telling yourself later? Where are you still negotiating standards you already know should be firm? This isn't about shame. It's about tightening the final screws before a shift. You don't want to cross into a new phase, dragging unresolved chaos behind you. That's exhausting. Close loops. Return messages you've been avoiding. Make the decision you've been postponing. Clean the physical space around you. Declutter your schedule. Clarity outside reinforces clarity inside. There's also a spiritual maturity forming here. You're not chasing signs anymore. You're listening. You're observing your own patterns. You're recognizing your triggers. You're adjusting without needing applause. That's powerful. You're moving from external validation to internal authority. And internal authority is stable. It doesn't panic when things fluctuate. It doesn't collapse when someone misunderstands you. It stays grounded. Grounded people move differently. You don't need to announce your shift. You embody it. March 3rd is not about spectacle. It's about embodiment. Embodiment of discipline. Embodiment of clarity. Embodiment of boundaries. Embodiment of self-respect. You've been talking about leveling up. Now, it's about living like it. Not performatively, privately, because private discipline produces public ease. There may be temptations in these days leading up to slack off, to overindulge, to ignore the inner nudge. That's normal. Every transition tests your seriousness. But you don't need to be extreme. You need to be consistent. Consistency beats intensity every time. A steady walk is more powerful than a dramatic sprint. Chosen one, this chapter is about tightening your grip on who you're becoming. Not gripping with fear, gripping with intention. You don't need to control the future. You just need to control your choices today. Your energy feels different because it is. You're not the same person who entered this year, and you won't be the same person after March 3rd. Not because magic will happen, but because you chose awareness over autopilot. You chose reflection over distraction. You chose discipline over drift. That choice accumulates. You are stabilizing, and stabilization is the foundation for acceleration. Let these next days be intentional, not frantic, not pressured, intentional. When the date arrives, you won't feel shock, you'll feel readiness, and readiness is what shifts timelines quietly. You needed to see this before March 3rd, not because something outside of you is changing, but because something inside of you is solidifying. Chosen one, this chapter is about the silence right before something locks in. Not the dramatic kind of silence, not the eerie kind, the steady kind. The kind where everything feels almost normal, too normal, like the air is holding its breath. As March 3rd gets closer, you might notice something subtle, less chaos, or maybe less tolerance for chaos, less emotional noise, less need to explain yourself. It's not that life suddenly became perfect, it's that you stopped reacting the same way. That's the shift. There's a difference between external change and internal recalibration. External change is loud. You can point to it, name it, show it. Internal recalibration is quieter. It feels like a private upgrade, like something under the surface has stabilized. You don't spiral as easily. You don't overthink every small thing. You don't chase closure the way you used to. And if you do feel those urges, they don't control you the same way. That's maturity settling in. This chapter isn't about doing more. It's about holding steady. Because right before a transition, there's often a temptation to overcorrect, to make a dramatic move, to prove you're ready. But readiness doesn't need proving. It shows up in restraint, in consistency, in choosing not to react when you could, in choosing to rest when you would normally distract yourself, in choosing clarity over chaos, even when chaos feels familiar. Familiar is seductive, especially when you're about to evolve. The closer you get to a threshold, the more nostalgia can try to pull you back. Old habits might whisper, old connections might resurface, old doubts might test you one last time. Not to destroy you, to measure you. And this isn't a cosmic test. It's an identity check. Are you still the version that reacts impulsively? Are you still the version that tolerates less than you deserve? Are you still the version that shrinks when things feel uncertain? Or have you actually changed? That's what this silence is revealing. Not through fireworks, through observation. Watch how you respond in these final days before March 3rd. Not with anxiety, with awareness. Notice where you stay calm. Notice where you set boundaries. Notice where you walk away without drama. Those small responses are proof of growth. Growth doesn't always feel like expansion. Sometimes it feels like peace. And peace can feel unfamiliar if you've lived in tension for a long time. You might even catch yourself thinking, why does everything feel so still? Stillness is not stagnation. Stillness is stabilization. It's the concrete drying. It's the foundation hardening. You don't need another revelation. You don't need another breakthrough moment. You need consistency. March 3rd is not about something happening to you. It's about something solidifying within you. The decisions you've been making quietly, the boundaries you've been reinforcing, the habits you've been refining. They're about to feel natural instead of forced. That's powerful, because when discipline feels natural, momentum becomes sustainable. You're not trying so hard anymore. You're aligning. And alignment doesn't feel chaotic. It feels steady. There's also a relational shift happening under the surface. You may feel less attached to needing everyone to understand you, less desperate for validation, less inclined to over-explain your choices. That's self-trust growing. Self-trust doesn't shout, it stands quietly. It says, I know what I'm doing, even when the path isn't fully visible, even when others don't see the vision yet. You don't feel the same urgency to convince. That's evolution. Convincing is exhausting. Alignment is calm. As March 3rd approaches, don't look for signs in the sky. Look at your behavior. That's where the proof is. Are you handling pressure differently? Are you thinking long-term instead of short-term? Are you pausing before reacting? Those are shifts, real ones. And real shifts don't need drama to validate them. You may also feel a strange sense of closure, not with one specific thing, with a mindset, with a chapter, with a version of yourself that carried you through survival but isn't needed in the same way anymore. Honor that. Don't rush to replace it. Don't fill the space with noise. Let the transition breathe. You don't need to force a new identity. It's already forming. March 3rd will not announce itself with thunder. It will arrive quietly, and you will cross into it differently than you would have a few months ago. More grounded, more aware, less reactive, more intentional. That's the shift. Chosen one, this chapter is about trust. Not trust in the date, trust in your evolution. You didn't stumble into growth. You chose it, repeatedly, quietly, without applause. And now, it's becoming part of you. When the day comes, you won't feel shock. You'll feel recognition. Recognition that you prepared. Recognition that you tightened what needed tightening. Recognition that you didn't scroll past your own awakening. Stay steady. Stay calm. Stay disciplined in the small things, because small things compound. And what feels like an ordinary date on the calendar is actually a checkpoint in your internal timeline. You needed to see this before March 3rd, not because something magical is coming, but because you are stabilizing into someone who no longer waits for magic. You build momentum, and momentum, once aligned, carries you forward without noise. Chosen One. This chapter is about the weight of choice. Because as March 3rd approaches, something becomes undeniable. You are not being pushed into a new season. You are choosing it. And choice is heavier than destiny. It's easier to say, "It happened to me." It's harder to say, "I decided." But that's where you are now. Up until this point, it may have felt like life was shaping you through circumstances. Lessons came. People left. Opportunities shifted. You reacted. You adapted. You survived. Now, you are no longer just adapting. You are selecting. Selecting what stays. Selecting what ends. Selecting who has access. Selecting what version of yourself continues forward. That's powerful. And power requires responsibility. There's a quiet moment before any internal promotion where you realize no one is coming to enforce your growth. No one is going to stand over you and demand better habits. No one is going to force you to maintain boundaries. No one is going to drag you into discipline. It's you, just you. And that realization can feel lonely for a second, but it's also freeing. Because when you realize you are the deciding factor, you stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop waiting for someone else to change. You stop waiting for clarity to arrive wrapped in certainty. You move, not recklessly, deliberately. March 3rd represents a threshold of self-leadership. Not external leadership, internal. It's the moment you stop negotiating with your lower standards. The moment you stop telling yourself, "I'll start next week." The moment you stop blaming timing. There's something about this date that feels like a mirror. It reflects back at you what you've been tolerating. Where have you been slightly out of integrity? Not in big dramatic ways, in small ways. Small compromises, small procrastinations, small excuses. Those small things compound, and you feel it now. You feel the slight discomfort when you delay something you know you should do. You feel the tension when you say yes, but mean no. You feel the drain when you entertain conversations that don't align. That awareness is growth. But awareness without decision creates frustration. This chapter is about decision. Not a dramatic life overhaul, a tightening, a quiet commitment. You might not tell anyone about it, but internally, you decide, "I don't live like that anymore." That sentence changes everything, because behavior follows identity, and identity follows decision. You are no longer trying to prove growth. You are protecting it. There's also something deeper happening. You are becoming less emotional about what you release, less dramatic, less reactive. You don't need a fight to exit. You don't need closure speeches. You don't need to win the argument. You just adjust. That emotional steadiness is new. Before, everything felt intense. Now, things feel clear. Clear doesn't feel explosive. It feels calm. And calm is strength. March 3rd isn't a day where fireworks explode. It's a day where something stabilizes. And stabilization requires ownership. You may feel tested in subtle ways leading up to it. Old habits might tempt you. Old dynamics might try to pull you back into familiar roles. Not because the universe is against you, because your identity is being solidified. Every time you respond differently, you reinforce who you're becoming. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you strengthen your future. Every time you hold your boundary without guilt, you build authority. Authority over your own life. That's the real shift. Not money, not status, not recognition, authority, self-governance, self-leadership. You are stepping into a version of yourself that doesn't need external enforcement to do what's right. You do it because it aligns. And alignment feels clean. You may notice you care less about being understood, less about being validated, less about being seen in a certain light. You care more about being aligned with yourself. That's evolution. There's also a shedding of urgency happening. You're not rushing the future. You're not panicking about the timeline. You're pacing yourself. That's maturity. Immature growth is frantic. Mature growth is steady, and steady growth lasts. March 3rd feels like a checkpoint because you've been slowly becoming someone new without announcing it. You've been choosing better thoughts, better responses, better habits. Now the accumulation of those choices is forming identity. Identity feels different than motivation. Motivation is temporary. Identity is stable. You don't need to hype yourself up to act aligned anymore. It's becoming natural. That's powerful. Because when alignment becomes natural, self-sabotage loses its grip. You no longer feel pulled toward chaos for stimulation. You no longer need drama to feel alive. You no longer seek intensity to feel important. You seek peace. Peace is not passive. Peace is disciplined. Peace requires boundaries. Peace requires saying no. Peace requires walking away. Peace requires choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term ego. And you are learning that. This chapter is not about preparing for something external to change. It's about preparing for yourself to solidify. Solidify into someone who doesn't flinch at discomfort, who doesn't collapse under pressure, who doesn't regress when things get quiet. You are becoming consistent. Consistency is underrated, but consistency builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds expansion. You don't need to do anything extreme before March 3rd. You need to stay steady, stay honest, stay disciplined in small ways, because small ways become big results. When the date arrives, you won't feel fireworks. You'll feel recognition. Recognition that you chose growth when you could have chosen comfort. Recognition that you tightened what needed tightening. Recognition that you didn't scroll past your own responsibility. Chosen One, this chapter is about ownership, not mystical alignment, not cosmic intervention. Ownership. And once you own your direction, you stop fearing dates on a calendar. You move through them intentionally. You needed to see this before March 3rd, not because fate is waiting, but because you are. Waiting to fully step into the version of yourself you've already been becoming. And that step, it's yours to take. Chosen One, this final chapter is not about March 3rd anymore. It's about who you are when the day actually arrives. Because here's the truth. The calendar will flip whether you're ready or not. The sun will rise. The world will move. Nothing dramatic may happen externally. No trumpet, no flashing sign in the sky. But internally, you will know. Not because something magical exploded into your life overnight, but because something in you held the discipline, held the boundary, held the decision, held the standard. That's what this entire journey has been about. Not predicting a date, becoming someone steady enough to cross it consciously. There's a quiet confidence that forms when you realize you don't need dramatic confirmation anymore. You don't need the universe to shake the ground for you to feel significant. You don't need an external event to validate your growth. You've been building something invisible, self-trust. And self-trust is subtle. It doesn't shout, it doesn't perform, it doesn't beg for attention. It simply moves with quiet certainty. You don't react the same way you used to. You don't chase urgency. You don't spiral when things feel uncertain. There's a steadiness now, a calm undercurrent that wasn't there before. That's the shift. March 3rd was never the miracle. It was the marker, a line in your internal timeline where you stopped negotiating with the old version of yourself. You stopped waiting to feel ready. You stopped blaming circumstances. You stopped postponing growth. And once you stopped postponing it, it became real. This final chapter is about integration. Everything you reflected on, everything you tightened, everything you released, everything you decided, it now becomes identity. Identity is powerful because it doesn't rely on mood. You don't wake up and ask, "Do I feel disciplined today?" You simply live aligned. You don't wake up and ask, "Do I feel worthy today?" You simply carry yourself like you are. That's what solidification looks like. There will still be challenges. Let's not pretend growth eliminates friction, but friction won't destabilize you the same way. Because you are no longer fragile in your standards. You are no longer unsure about your direction. You are no longer dependent on emotional highs to feel progress. Progress feels quieter now, more grounded, more sustainable. You might even notice that you're less interested in explaining your transformation to others. You don't need them to fully understand it. You understand it, and that's enough. The world may look exactly the same on March 3rd, but you will move differently inside it. That's the difference. You'll make choices faster. You'll say no more easily. You'll protect your peace more instinctively. You'll recognize distractions before they hook you. You'll recover from mistakes faster. That's growth, not perfection. Resilience, and resilience compounds. Chosen one, you needed to see this before March 3rd because preparation changes posture, and posture changes outcomes. You stand differently when you know you're aligned. You speak differently when you trust yourself. You decide differently when you've done the internal work. There's no drama in this final chapter, no mystical countdown, just embodiment. You are no longer reacting to life blindly. You are responding intentionally. That is the true threshold. Dates don't change people. Decisions do. And you've made yours. Now when the calendar turns, you won't feel pressure. You'll feel recognition. Recognition that you stepped into this moment awake. Recognition that you didn't scroll past your own accountability. Recognition that you chose growth quietly without needing applause. And from here forward, you don't wait for special days to realign. You live aligned daily. That's the maturity. That's the stability. That's the real transformation. March 3rd was never about prediction. It was about preparation. And now that you're prepared, you don't move with anxiety. You move with authority. Chosen one, the day will come. The page will turn. And you will walk into it not as someone hoping for change, but as someone who already became it.